The Angry Chicken is a production of Amove TV. Bookmark amove.tv for more gaming and esports shows. The Angry Chicken is directly supported by listeners like you via patreon.com/TAC.
Everyone, get in here! Ready for action! I've got the beast in my sight.
A podcast about Hearthstone, Heroes of Warcraft. This is The Angry Chicken.
Welcome back, everybody. This is, well, The Angry Chicken, as Scott Fletcher's disembodied voice just made amply clear via the intro music. I'm Garrett Weinzierl. He's Willie Does Gregory. She's Jocelyn Moffat. And guys, I have a Star Wars hangover. So I'm gonna try and keep that in check today. I'm gonna try that very hard to keep that in check.
I have a Leafs are in the playoffs hangover, so I'm just like constantly on edge for the next week.
I don't know what anything. I don't know any word that just left your mouth. I don't know what that means.
Hockey.
Oh, cool. All right, sweet.
Sorry, the Warriors are in the playoffs, but I have no tension around it because round one we're just gonna run over everybody. That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, even when the Leafs are up 5-1 with 3 minutes left, they can still lose. So there is
one of those things. Yeah, you don't feel good ever.
No.
One thing I know about hockey, which I know very little, but I know that goals happen quickly and in bunches. So
yes.
Even when you're there, you don't feel good because you're always cold. Even if you go to
okay.
Some of us like to be cold, Garrett.
I want to make a
White Walkers.
Hearthstone analogy here, and
All
that
right.
is that hockey, to me, as an uneducated viewer, seems to be the most RNG-based professional sport.
Oh, dude.
Because that puck just bounces around and does whatever, you know? It hits off this and that, and it's so tiny. Who knows where the hell it is?
It's Volcano.
Who knows where it is? So you must have loved it when they brought in the whole neon swoosh that followed the puck so that Americans could actually follow the game.
What the hell was happening? Sure, yeah. We need yellow lines on our football field. We need it all spelled out for us.
All those graphics.
Because otherwise, I just believe that there is a puck somewhere inside the box that is my TV screen. Although when I saw it live, you could follow it. When I saw it live, when I went to a game, I was like, all right, I get it now. But watching it on TV, I was always like, I just see guys skating really fast. What's happening?
This is the most off-topic intro to the show we've had in a while.
I apologize. I'm just really
Hearthstone,
excited because this hasn't happened in 4 years and we haven't won the cup in 50. So Toronto being in the playoffs is a really big deal.
Well,
Right.
I'm excited for you. I think.
Thank you, Garrett.
I don't know. Yeah, it's a White Walker sport, so I just get excited when a bunch of Florida boys win it, and it's kind of just ironic. So
Yeah.
Florida, the land of hockey.
yeah, you know.
Canada hates that, by the way. When Florida teams win, we're just like, come on.
Yep.
It does seem like something's up with that. Yeah.
Yep.
We have some really nice ice rinks here.
Okay.
And mostly Canadian players.
Pretty. Yeah, you know.
Isn't that how you win at hockey? You just steal a bunch of Canadians?
Just
Yeah.
glaze over that little fact. Just glaze over it. Thank you. Very cool. But hey, other than Star Wars and hockey, how's Ungoro treating you guys? This is the second week. Are we there yet? Are we agreeing with the smuggest comments I've seen in forever on our YouTube? That eventually they're just gonna break down and whine about Quest Rogue just like they did with Pirate Rogue. And to that person, I would like to say there's a big difference from complaining about a deck 1 month out from the next expansion and calling the game dead 3 days after a new expansion releases. And to you, I say, please start your own show because I want you to see how many listeners you don't get.
Well, I'll address some of the feedback I've gotten, which is that apparently we did complain about Quest Rogue last week, and I thought that we had talked about Quest Rogue being not really as big of a problem as people were making it out to be, and that pretty soon it'll get figured out. I played Quest Rogue all the way to rank 5, barely losing a game, and since hitting rank 5, I have like completely stalled out. I've gone to like 4 stars, back to 2, back to 4, back to 2. People know how to play against the deck now, and it is not the powerhouse everybody was assuming it would be. That being said, still a very good deck. Very, very good deck, and a super fun one to play, actually. So
Yeah,
I am a defender of the Quest Rogue. I think it's a cool thing.
I think the point that I was making about Quest Rogue, which was a little bit on the negative side, was basically just saying I was really excited about it because I thought it was going to be the fun deck that no one was going to play. And then so when everyone figured it out really fast and it seemed to be really powerful, I was kind of let down by that because I was like, oh, I thought that I was going to be the one to play around with it, figure it out, and then I wasn't, and that made me sad. So it wasn't the deck, it was that everyone was playing that quest, and I thought that was going to be like my little fun niche thing, and then it wasn't.
So your hipster status was robbed of you.
Yeah, exactly. It's such
So
a hipstery
that
problem
bothers
to
you.
have, which I'm not used to
But you know what,
having,
though? The deck did, from its original incarnation, and we'll talk about it when we get to our strategy section, it has come quite a long way in a very short amount of time. A lot of people were not running like the igneous elemental thing before.
Nope.
Yeah, the
And then everyone
elemental
figured out, like,
package, yeah.
I just need to get these little flame elemental dudes. And
Don't need to
quest
bounce
complete.
anything, yeah.
At first, it was all about bouncing, novice engineers and stuff. I barely ever do that anymore.
Yep, me as well. We'll talk a lot about that in our strategy segment this week. But before we get into this week's news, let's thank our sponsor of this here episode, Uniregistry, where you can go and find yourself the perfect domain name. And we'll just double dip here. Might recommend .game domains. Those are pretty cool. You can find those at uniregistry.com. But they are it's a great website. I've used many a domain name manager, many of which want to upcharge me constantly for crap I don't need, send me a lot of junk mail, that kind of jazz. You don't get that with Uniregistry. You get exactly what you showed up to the site for, which is a really simple, easy to use way to manage your domains and buy new ones. So go check them out, uniregistry.com. We thank them for their support of the Angry Chicken. And now, with that in mind, I think it's time for news, which our hosts, other than me, won't be able to hear because my iPad is with my wife who's traveling. So enjoy the bumper, everyone, but Jocelyn Dills.
Good news, everyone!
It sounded just as good as it always did, guys. I promise. I promise.
Hey, it's in my head constantly. I know exactly how it sounds.
Anytime you hear a piece of news that you like, you just hear Futurama.
I had a little good news, everyone, right to the beginning.
And then some... Yeah, it's wonderful.
There you go.
So basically, our listeners out there just got the bumper twice, but the second time was even better because we were trying to do it. But hey, the global games have begun, and if you're someone like me and you didn't really pay too close of attention to the schedule before now, they've begun, and they're going to be here a while. Oh my God, this is such a long event.
This is going to take a long time.
I thought this was going to be kind of just like a supplementary little mini tournament to ride the hype of Ungoro and get us to the next HGC. No, this is a bloodbath.
Yeah, the first group stage, which I didn't realize. I looked up Canada's last game, and it's like June 15th. I was like, wait, what? Like 2 months from now, we're going to be finishing the round of 48?
But I think this is the way to do this, though, because with 48 teams, you really give them all a lot of, they don't all just like come in and then they're just gone, right? Like they have a lot of play before the first group stage is done. Then there's another group stage. And so all of the teams that are participating, it's a great way to like make some names, right? That people don't know about because there's so many of these players. When you're talking about some of the little known countries where maybe there's one name, right? We know RDU. What about all those other Romanian players, right? Like there's a bunch of names now that are coming in, and you're going to get to watch them compete now with 80,000 people watching or whatever it was the first day. So that's really, really cool. Hopefully by the end of this, we'll have a lot of new stars, which I think is awesome.
Mm-hmm. I also really enjoyed watching the teams that were actually like there in person. Like obviously Super JJ and Life Coach are, like super bros and
at Camp Life Coach. Yeah.
Yeah, they were Camp Life Coach. Yeah. And then they were all wearing their
they're all
German,
their jerseys on.
Yeah. All their German football jerseys. And like, oh man, it was so cool to see them like all in one place.
After all the controversy around the German team, they turned out to be like the team that was clearly having the most fun in the end.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it was. I tuned into this too, and it was nice that with all of the controversy that you just mentioned. It's like, oh, hey, this is actually kind of a really fun, seems like a super positive vibes tournament. Especially when you get the webcams where there's multiple people in the same room and they're all reacting to the same bad beat top deck that just happened.
The team aspect of Hearthstone is becoming very cool lately. We just had the Red Bull Brawl event too recently, and it's almost like the job of the casters now is to just kind of interject every now and then just let people listen to pro players talk through plays. And I love it. It's so good because you learn much more from the pro players themselves, and then having a caster kind of, tell you what that information might mean if you're a newer player, than you do from just the casters essentially guessing what the best move is going to be every turn, right? So now the caster's job is more to discuss what the players are already discussing and try to kind of filter through that information rather than them just sitting there just kind of wondering what they might be doing, because a lot of times you'll get some misinformation from the casters. They're not necessarily pro players. They're all very much good players.
They're entertainers, but
they're guys who hit legend and stuff like that, but they're not competing in most cases for HCT points and things like that. So their knowledge of the game is there, but the kind of level of knowledge that separates the good player from the pro level player is pretty massive. Regardless of what people might say, it's pretty massive. When you hear those guys talk through it, it just brings a whole new level of, I think, really interesting discussion into the format. So very, very cool stuff. I actually don't remember. Did they do that on the HGG though? Was that?
No, it was still just casters.
They weren't doing
talking
any of the player talk. Yeah.
No, but
it's become like a thing though now.
Yeah, I mean, I don't necessarily think I want all tournaments to be like that. And especially if you're keep wanting to try to bring in new viewers, like a lot of times if you come in and you're just listening to people who might not necessarily be good on mic, just stumble through a play. While you and I will enjoy that because, we can go make a podcast, make it sound as good as we want it to afterwards, and we don't really care if the two pro players debating their play is they have a good cadence or not. But I think it's important for new people in the scene to kind of have that presentation, that polish.
Yeah,
but I'm on board with you.
Sometimes you're missing out on those cool moments, like let's listen into these players discuss the play, and then you switch to Kibler and Toast, and they're talking about how they should never use the cute cat to trade. You got to save the cute cat. Yeah, that was a very special moment recently from the Red Bull event. But yeah, you're right. The presentation is important for a lot of people.
Yeah, I like both. I think I'll be surprised if we ever really get that from big name Blizzard tournaments, because that's a lot of quality control on their end. And I don't necessarily just mean because not everyone's going to mic. I mean because if you're like me, you probably cuss the paint off the walls while you're playing Hearthstone.
Yeah, you tune in.
And there were a couple of times where they'd switch to the players and they were just like sailors on a ship. Yeah, and you were just like,
yep.
And now we're back to the casters. That was interesting. Okay, let's forget that happened.
Ooh, he had some really choice things to say about the opponent's mom. That was mean. That was mean.
It's great for us, but there are probably a lot of kids watching, right?
Yes, yes.
I think there's enough room in the esports landscape for both types of things. So I enjoy it too. Dills. So, but really, I think what is required is for me to just go USA,
right.
USA,
and apparently Canada.
It still works.
Yeah,
it still works. Syllables.
There was a lot of 3-0s actually from teams I wasn't really expecting to be kind of like powerhouse teams, but there's still a lot of room for things to shift and shake up. But I definitely do think that Canada has a fantastic team.
I was really impressed with our team. We did so well, especially that first game.
Yeah.
I really did not think that Hot Form was going to pull out that win, and just seeing the different ways that he played around all of the different things, I was like, dude, that's why you are a pro player and I am not. Because I would have seen that board of 4 or 5 5/5s from my opponent, and then getting a prep off a Swashbuckler and getting your quest out. I would have just been like, all right.
That was a Quest Rogue mirror match, right?
It was, yeah.
And he hadn't gotten his quest done, and the other guy did, and then he found a way. It was the glacial
he
freezing stuff.
Yeah. Swashbuckler, the prep, which was the only card that would have put him way ahead, and he got it, and just Hot Form was like, oh man, but then he was like, all right, well, You know, I can still see a line to win, whereas I would have just been like, yeah, GG, concede.
This is where I want Hearthstone to be, though, because I feel like in Mean Streets, you could tell by turn 4 or 5 who was going to win, and you would be right like 99% of the time.
Mm-hmm.
But I think now with Journey to Un'Goro, there are so many more ways to flip games. And now like there's these really crucial moments in like the mid game where if you can find that line, then you can still eke out victories that look completely hopeless, right? So it's very cool. And this is where I think Hearthstone should be. Comebacks and that kind of thing are really important in card games where, you know, getting the perfect top deck are like huge moments that you'll always remember in big card game tournaments. And we kind of have that now with Un'Goro. And I don't feel like we didn't have it with Mean Streets and even,
I feel like,
you know, Old Gods. So
I feel like, I mean, think back last year though, like, you know, think hard and by all means disagree with me, but DreamHack, which you and I both attended, Dills, right after Old Gods released, it felt a lot like this to me. And we're still very close to the release of Un'Goro. DreamHack was the first big tournament after the release of Old Gods, and things were healthy. There was a lot of diversity going on, and I felt that there, you know, we had those matchups like in this case Quest Rogue versus Quest Rogue. We had the, you know, like the Control Warriors with Elise versus Control Warriors with Elise. So I think I mean I still think time will tell. We'll see how this shakes out.
Absolutely.
It's still, you know, we're moving into our third week of the expansion. But
DreamHack is coming up again, by the way, and we'll see. I think DreamHack, this tournament was very cool, and so was the Red Bull one because they are kind of like the first things we've seen since the release. But DreamHack is now, rather than it being essentially, you know, whatever, a week after like it was last year, now it's like a full month, right? So this is going to be the first time where things have settled down just a touch, and we're going to start to see like the strongest actual decks, I think, start to come out there. And then hopefully if Un'Goro continues to do what it has been doing, it's going to keep evolving. If this meta can evolve all the way until the next release, then this has got to be the most successful expansion that Hearthstone's ever put out, right? Because that's always been the problem. We expect the meta to continue to evolve, and then at some point it just stagnates. And right now, it feels like there's still a lot more room to evolve. Decks are constantly coming out. Decks we thought were really strong are suddenly, you know, now very weak. I mean, we're going to talk about Quest Rogue a lot. That deck was, you know, just the ultimate cancer 2 weeks ago. And now it's like, it's 48% win rate or whatever. Yeah, it's just a normal deck, you know? So we're going to see a lot more of that. And DreamHack, I think, is really going to be kind of the actual start of what I think is going to be an evolving tournament meta for the next 3 months, which is, please, at least, fingers crossed that that's how it works. But it feels that way a little bit.
It does. I think it feels that way because it feels like there are emerging decks from pretty much every class. Like, I was looking at my stats, so I've played around 150 games this season, I think, and I'm looking at my stats, and like my pie chart used to be like 1 or 2 big huge chunks and then like little slivers of people trying to have fun. And this time it's pretty well spread across all classes. Like, I've seen fairly close to equal numbers. I have, I think, the most warrior, but even that is like maybe 15 to 20% of my games. Like, it's not overwhelming. Like, you know, 50% of my games are against Pirate Warrior. It's like everything's really well spread out. So
actually, looking at my stats right now, Priest is actually the most represented class. Over what? Like, I've got about 100 something, 120 games or so. Priest has the most. Paladin the least. Why? I don't know. But everything else, you're right, is like pretty even. So that's very cool. That's what we want to see.
Yeah, mine is.
So I think that's why it feels so good, and it feels like there's a lot of space still for people to kind of innovate when it comes to new decks, because every class seems to have a lot of viable choices to make, right? Like, you might have some sort of overarching archetype, but then you can make a few tech changes here and there, and it all feels really good and feels really competitive.
The thing that I'm currently looking at that's blowing my mind is the stats for my opponents, not necessarily the games I play, because I knew I was pretty heavily biased towards Warlock and Rogue, and that's definitely looking at my stats for the whole season, what's happening. But I went up against more Hunters than anything else.
I've seen a lot of Hunter too,
So I've got 19 Priest, 15 Hunter, 15 Mage, 15 Warrior as like the top. And that sounds about like what I've been hearing people say, although Priest is a little surprising, but Priest has become, Yeah, I am Zogex in the chat just said it's really new player unfriendly. I would make an argument against that, and that's definitely not necessarily like untrue, but I'd make an argument against that if you are a newer player and you're willing to just kind of go for one certain deck, tons and tons of cards that were previously unusable, that were in the basic and classic set, are now totally viable again, right? So Inner Fire is like suddenly a thing
Right.
again, Priest, and that's one of the things that every new player in the history of Hearthstone has always gravitated towards when they first pick up the game. They see, Divine Spirit, Inner Fire, and they go, "Oh my God, well, that looks great."
That seems amazing.
And then it's actually good again, right? And so that's actually how people are playing Priest now. So if you wanted to go down that road, you can pick one class and really kind of make it. And yes, you will need, certain stuff, but a lot of early on people were like, I don't have all the quests. Turns out the quests aren't actually that great.
No.
No, and we don't go too far into that because we do have
Sure.
an email about that later on in the show. But yeah, you're right. Quest decks are not like the top 9 decks by any
Yeah.
stretch of
But
the
think about when like
imagination.
Control Warrior was a dominant class in the game, and you were like, okay, how am I gonna build my Control Warrior deck? I guess I need 15 legendaries. Like now you might need 1 or 2, but you don't need, as many as you needed to make one deck. And like now, the fact that Stone Tusk Boar and Novice Engineer are, stars in that Quest Rogue deck. Quest Rogue is really like get the quest and then a bunch of cheap cards, and boom, you're viable, right? So I think there's an argument to be made for both sides. If you want to play all the classes, then definitely this is a tough expansion for you.
But that's true of like the game since it's been in
Yes.
existence. Like, if
Yes.
you want to come in and be new, or if you want to come in and be a free to play player, it's like we've always said you can't have it all. If you're, if you want to play on a budget and play every class competitively, that's just not going to happen. Does
That's
not
gonna
compute.
take some cash. You're gonna have to pull some money out of your pocket. But I'll also say this: there's a reason why people in Hearthstone, because in Magic we make these comparisons, and they're not necessarily all 1-to-1. Because like in Magic, you can get one deck. It's gonna cost you a lot, but you get one deck, and then how often are you actually playing your deck? Right? You're playing it every weekend maybe, and you have to show up somewhere, find a guy, play it, find a tournament, enter. Hearthstone, you definitely want more than one deck because it is true, and this was a point made to me on my Twitter when we were talking about it, where somebody was like, in Hearthstone you play, 15, 20 games a day on your phone or at home, and they happen pretty quick. One deck wears itself out a little bit faster in the world of Hearthstone than it does in the world of Magic. So you can't just feel good about the one deck I have. You feel like I need a few. I need some choices. Otherwise, I'm going to get bored of like spamming this one deck. So it is true that because of the way Hearthstone works, you do want to have like 3 or 4 viable decks. So I am with those people on that.
Yeah.
But like you
But it
said,
used to
Garrett,
be-
you can't have everything. You got to kind of pick and choose your battles.
Well, it used to be, we used to recommend Zoo to free-to-play and new players often because that had the highest amount of common and rare cards. But now you can pretty much build a viable rogue deck, Zoo deck, like Zoo Warlock deck. You can go with
Dude,
like
mid-range
Beast,
Hunter.
a Beast Hunter deck. Yeah. Like
0
everything
legendaries.
is, yeah, exactly. Everything is based around in those 3 decks. Like you have variety, but it's also based around a lot of common and rare cards. So as well as, like the class cards you get for leveling up. So I think that there's a lot more options right now that are still viable on ladder. I think it's more than we've ever really had.
Yeah. I'm actually looking through some of my decks right now, and there's very few of them that are running that many legendaries. And I think our mentality has been, since the inception of Hearthstone, that the legendary cards are the cards you build decks around, right? And those are really important keystone cards. And so that mentality is kind of carried into Journey to Ungoro, where we look and we go, oh my God, 2 legendaries per class, so many legendaries I need, barely any neutrals that I can share across decks, and you think, oh, this is impossible. I'll never be able to build a viable deck. But I'm literally looking through right now, and it's like a ton of these decks have 1, maybe 2 legendaries, and mostly full of commons and rares.
Yeah, and that could change, but no, you're absolutely right. And there's always been that, right? There's always been competitive decks that have been quite dust affordable to craft in the past, like Joss brought up Zoo.
Yeah.
And so I don't know. Yeah, I'm with Dills. I don't think it's any more or any less friendly or unfriendly to new players.
it's just different. It's just daunting.
Different, yeah.
Yeah, it's daunting when you look at the sheer number of cards and you start to think about them, and it's like, kind of like a misunderstanding of what the quality cards actually are, because you think legendary, that's got to be the best card, but they're not always the cards that you build everything around. And yes, there are certain ones here and there. Like we just talked about, next week we might want to do this Hemet Burn Mage, and Garrett's like, I want to craft Hemet. And it's like, yeah, all right. Well, that might be a deck that everybody's gonna do, because they're not willing to spend dust on a card like that. That's so specific and tailored for one type of deck.
Yeah, absolutely. Anyways, we're beating around the bush on Quest Rogue so much, we should probably just get to it. Before we do that, I do want to let our listeners know the only other piece of news that we're really going to mention this week, other than HGG, before we got into this random overarching discussion about Hearthstone as a whole on a philosophical level, was the fact that the most exciting thing that has happened for me ever, a Hearthstone art book has finally been announced. It's coming out this October. You can pre-order it now. This is not a commercial. This is just one super big Blizzard art nerd freaking out because I can't wait to buy this thing. Also, I've sent a question to Team 5 because I want to know what sets will be included in this book. Like, what are we looking at? Are we looking at like just vanilla here, which would just be a reprint of the TCG book I already have? Or are we looking at a couple expansions, maybe up to frequent, like the frequent set? We'll see. Current set, frequent set. That's not a thing.
Well, it does say unseen concepts from early in Hearthstone's development to hundreds of beautiful cards that have been created. So, I don't know how up to the minute it is.
yeah, we'll have to see. So if I hear back from that, I will let
Although it
know.
does come out in October, so I think having Ungoro in there would be realistic.
Yeah, that's got some time in it. So also I breezed over the page. I've already pre-ordered it, but I don't know how many pages it is. Pages has a thing to do with it too. So anyway, let's finally do it. Let's buckle down and talk some Quest Rogue. It's time for this week's strategy segment.
Hit it very hard.
Wanna blow something up? Time to pay!
So before we get into it, if you're wondering what deck list we're personally looking at right now on screen, if you're on an audio version, it's just the one on Tempo Storm right now. Not getting fancy this week. Dills will tell you that he took out one Vanish, put in a Fan of Knives. That's about it. So you can go and look up the deck list on Tempo Storm if you haven't looked it up already. So as we mentioned multiple times today, it was the hot jam. Everyone was, not everyone, a section, a vocal majority on places like Reddit and the forums were a little concerned about this deck. Dills, you said that this has been probably your most played deck of the last week. It took you all the way to 5. Yeah. I've played quite a few games with it, 17 games today alone with this very list. What has changed? Because some things have changed already within 1 week with this one archetype.
Yeah, so originally when this archetype first kind of hit, people were still running rogue staple cards like Backstab and Eviscerate. And so a lot of people were... It's just hard to wrap your head around the fact that Backstab isn't going to be in your rogue deck, right? And just kind of over time, the Igneous Elemental and Firefly kind of build started to kind of take hold. A lot of people saw that originally and were like, okay, that's pretty good. But most of the time early on with this deck, you were seeing people bouncing Swashbucklers and Novice Engineers a lot more. And now you're seeing that happen much less frequently, and now it's more about getting the Igneous Elemental out, running it into something, getting the little Flame Elemental dudes, and then using that token to get the quest complete. So that's kind of been the evolution of the deck, is it's just now really centered around that. The other thing that's happened is you saw people putting in the Bilefin Tidehunter, which really did shore up, I think, one of the poorer matchups for it early on, which was the Pirate Warrior. So basically you can stabilize now with the Bilefin Tidehunter, because once you get the quest done, chugging out 5/5 taunt minions can get you like over that hump where you're at 8 or 9 health at that point, and you can just kind of put a stop to everything all of a sudden.
Yeah,
plus you can bounce it and get more taunts.
I was about to say, yeah, I found myself doing that today, and I didn't research why Bilefin was in there or how to play it, but I found myself against a Pirate Warrior, and I'm like, I'm so dead, and I'm like, wait, I have a Bilefin and I have Shadow Step. I'm gonna turn this into Taunt Warrior all of a sudden.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, you just start spamming the board with 5/5s, and when some of them have taunt, that just puts up the necessary walls. So it's really cool kind of what's happened to the deck. And you look at it, and just kind of the core pieces obviously are your 6 bounce effects. And you can say you have 8 with Vanish, but Vanish is a pretty slow bounce effect that, it's not going to happen too often early on in the game. The reason why I went down to 1 Vanish and I put back in the Fan of Knives is that I found that cycle was just something I was missing a lot when I was running this type of version. The only real cycle that you had was the Novice Engineer, right? All the other stuff was kind of, the Swashbuckler is pulling a card from your opponent, so it's not really cycling into your deck. And so with a little bit of a lack in cycle, I realized that I needed some other card. I think Firebat was even running a version that was just super cycle heavy. That was running like shivs and stuff. I found that the 1 fan was enough, and it also, again, shored up that one bad matchup against Pirates where a fan was really good in the early game to cycle and also remove a bunch of Pirates, right? Especially around turn 3 when they're about to drop the 3/4 and, buff their weapons. So I really found that to be good. And I think you mentioned, Garrett, in our conversation that sometimes you'd have double Vanish in your hand.
Yes,
and that felt
was
really bad. Right?
So today I played 17 games. I went 10-7. I won 10. I lost 7. And probably 4 of those 7 losses were some of the worst feels I have had in Hearthstone in like recent months. It was debilitating, and it was because Vanish was just chilling in my hand from very early on. Sometimes, you throw some card back and you get it in your opening hand. Having just 1 early on is awful. If you get 2 early on, it's almost an auto loss.
Yeah, no, it's pretty bad, but it is a very useful card because the deck does play from behind. So it's really important to note, like a lot of people were calling this an aggro deck. It is not. It is essentially a combo deck that turns into a board control deck with a heavy amount of burst damage. So once you get the quest done, you get your 5/5s going, but you have to remember, like, it takes like till turn 4 on a good day to get the quest done. And then you have to pay 5 mana to cast the quest unless you get a prep, which, is going to happen sometimes, yes. And you'll get it for 2, and it's amazing. But most of the time, you'll probably end up having to pay the full 5 mana for it. And then at that point, unless you can run your board into theirs and they haven't cleared it, you're still playing from behind. So Vanish is a really good card in that respect to kind of like reset the board. Now all my dudes are 5/5s. I get them all back, and suddenly, like, now my power can begin, right? The power of making all these cheap minions into 5/5s starts around there. So the deck doesn't really start, and you can't call a deck that starts on like turn 6 an aggro deck, right? You just can't really.
As I believe yelled last week.
Yeah. It's like you're literally doing nothing for like 4 or 5 turns as you're just trying to complete the quest.
Yeah, it feels very, very skin of your teeth, and I haven't played a Hearthstone deck in a long time that has felt like sometimes when you lose this bad, and when you win sometimes like this gross. Like sometimes it just goes off, and like you said, on those few games, and there are few, it doesn't happen every time, guys. It's extremely draw dependent where you get your quest finished by 4. Like it's disgusting. And you feel you feel kind of dirty, like you need a shower, like you need to atone for the sins you just committed on a ladder.
When people concede at 30 health and you have nothing on the board, that's just like a crazy feeling.
Yeah.
You literally have 0 dudes, and then they're at 30, and the quest gets complete, and they're like, all right, I'm out.
Yeah, but all in the same, like, you can brick so hard with this deck. It can sometimes feel like, how does this deck win? And then the next game you get your quest done by 4 and you're like, oh, that's right, this can happen, I forgot. But there's been so many.
I'm make an analogy here to another deck that I think this deck plays like closer to, and I think that's Freeze Mage. Like I don't think a lot of people would consider it to be at all close to Freeze Mage, but there are many times, like Freeze Mage, you would be behind, drawing, and it's like, okay, I kill you. And I think with this deck, it's kind of the same thing. It's like I stall. I got 5/5s, I kill you, and you just are always coming from behind. So when you win, it does feel like, man, I barely got there, right? I'm at 6 and the dude was at 28, and then I just bursted him down with charging minions that I was bouncing, right? That it feels much more like that to me than it does like any sort of mid-range or anything like that. People are saying like Patron maybe, but Patron had like these big bursty combos. Maybe the Patron after they nerfed Warsong Commander would be a more apt description, because you build a board they can't deal with. But yeah, I feel like it's closer to that type of a deck than anything else we've seen. So yeah, you feel like sometimes you get blown out because you didn't get what you needed, and then a lot of times you win barely, and yeah, sometimes you blow them out too because you just draw perfectly. So, but it's never like this. It's not like a back and forth mid range game, and it's not like an aggro beat your face in game. It's just like, okay, I just need one more turn to get there, and if I get there, here I come. I really enjoy the play style of it.
Yeah, I do too. It's like for me, I look at it and it's not a token deck, but it feels like because you're playing all these like 1 mana minions with like almost no stats, that I'm getting this weird backdoor Hearthstone version of what I always wanted, which was have a bunch of little guys and a way to make them big and impactful. And this is not how I ever expected it to come to this game, but I'm finding myself for the first time really gravitating towards one of the most popular decks in the game, and I feel bad because I'm in Jocelyn's camp. I like being the hipster. I like being the I don't care if I'm ranked 10 this season. I want to play this deck. Deal with it.
It is still cool though. I mean, I understand Jocelyn's point about the deck got figured out so fast, and we were hoping it was going to be one of those decks that like Zetalot was going to find a way to win with Priest. There's going to be like some weird freaky deaky streamer who's going to make it work. But like, so Josh, have you kind of like been refusing to play it, or have you actually like tried? I know you played against it. Everybody has, but have you been playing with the deck at all?
I played with it a little bit in the very, very early days of the expansion, and the only reason I haven't played more with it is I feel like we talked about earlier, there are so many viable builds from so many different classes that I've just been like bouncing all over everything for the whole entire expansion so far. Exactly. So I've been playing a lot of a whole bunch of different decks, and I think though I'm now at a spot where I hit rank 10. And I think that the kind of like rank 15, 10, and 5 probably have the worst, like most confusing, hardest to get out of the metas, because you've got the people who are still trying to climb, but then you've got all the people who are like, I hit my goal. I made it here. So, and I'm not talking about like the whole bucket. I just mean like rank 15, rank 10, and rank 5 are just ridiculous. Like I never know what I'm going to play against. I don't know what's going on. Like I've really struggled. And I think that maybe I need to go back to something like a Quest Rogue or like something aggro just to get out of that little tiny one rank of rank 10. It's just been like the bane of my existence over the last weekend. So I don't know. I might actually go back to Quest Rogue and give it another try, because like I said, I tried it at the beginning of the expansion and the build was a lot different. Like there was no Vanish, there was no Mimic Pod, there were no elementals. Like you said, it was backstab, it was Abyss, it was all that kind of stuff. So I might give it a try now. But yeah, I was very hipstery with this deck.
You're not crazy, by the way, Jocelyn. I completely agree with you. Like anytime you're at the rank floor rank, at least right now, because an expansion just came out, that's 100% what it feels like. I've been part of the problem, by the way, after last week's show. I had just hit 15, I think the day before, so I was sitting at rank 15. You guys came on here with your cool ass decks you're talking about, and what did I do? Instead of sticking with what works, instead of sticking with what I was climbing with, I started trying all the cool crap you guys were talking about. I didn't know how to play it. I didn't know how to play your secret mage. But guess what? I had a really good time. Dills, I didn't know how to play your Silence Priest. Guess what? I freaking hate the deck. It's a piece of crap.
Whereas I tried the Silence Priest, I loved it.
Yeah, Silence Priest has done really well for me.
My first game
it's
with
funny,
it.
like I was looking at my stats, and because I was trying to get Golden Paladin and Golden Priest and stuff, I ended up playing a lot of those two classes. And with that Silence Priest, I was like 75% or something like that.
Man,
like it was just.
That's so not.
It
my
is a
experience.
weird deck. It's a very weird deck, and there's better decks now. I think the pure Tempo Priest now is a little bit better. And also there's like a Miracle Priest starting to happen now that's running the Lyra. So there's a couple things that have happened since then. But yeah, it was just like fun to have a Silence Priest work. It was like, oh my god, look at this Purify.
Yeah,
it's a thing.
And I'm being dramatic for effect. I broke even with it. I ended with a 50% win rate with it.
Sure.
And
it does feel sometimes though like you just there was nothing you could have done with that deck for sure.
Yeah. My first game.
You draw your dudes that can't attack and no silences. And you're like, cool. I'm playing dudes that do nothing.
And then you finally get an Argus, but then they like have some like board clear, and you're like,
sure,
whatever. I give up. Now, the first game I played with it, it went off perfectly. I smashed a shaman in the face for 24 damage, killing him. And it was beautiful. And then I went on like a 3-game loss streak. And I was just like, what the hell? But I had a quest to complete, so I kept playing it. And then I won a few more games, broke even, and called it a day. But,
I see. So like I was doing the same thing, Josh, and I was bouncing around 15 to 10 for a long time, like in the first few days. And then I went over to Azix's house. They're all playing Magic, and they're already starting the game. So I was like, well, I'll just play Hearthstone on my phone for a little while. And I was like, I'll just play this Quest Rogue. And then I just won, and I won, and I won, and I just didn't stop winning. And then I win streaked all the way into 5. Like I literally didn't lose a game from 10 to 5. I just win streak the whole way, and it was just disgusting how every single game, and I was just running good. Every single game the quest was done by like turn 4. Every single game I was, prepping out the quest spell, and it was nuts. Since that time though, since reaching 5, the deck has really been running about 500 or 50-50 for me, so
yeah, because I feel like once you get to 5, like people really have figured it out. They know how to play against
they're better
it. They
players.
know what to do. Yeah. So then I think you need to start to innovate a bit and vary your decks and try different things.
We should talk about that, by the way. Let's talk about how to play against the deck, because I think there's a lot of people who I saw people in the chat saying like there's no counterplay to this deck, and that is definitely not true. There is for sure counterplay.
People mess this deck up a lot. Like they leave their stuff on the board that they should be trying to bounce, and that people can make a lot of mistakes. And if you know how the deck plays, then you can recognize the mistake and you can punish it.
Yeah, I would like to put out there though, like, because I'm sure that's gonna, I don't know, I feel like that'll probably rub some people the wrong way. It's like, oh well, if they don't make a mistake, then how do I deal with it? And it's like, eventually people are gonna stop making mistakes. But 100%, if you notice someone, not bounce their freaking Firefly, kill the damn Firefly.
Sure, but even beyond that, because you could say, oh, they're just playing solitaire. But there are still ways to counterplay, even with a deck that's maybe not supposed to be favored, right? Like I've beaten them pretty solidly with a deck like Taunt Warrior, which is supposed to technically be a bad matchup, right? Like Taunt Warrior is supposed to not be able to beat this because you're not pressuring them fast enough, right? But if you do pressure them fast enough and hold brawls until after the quest is complete and things like that, then you absolutely can counterplay the deck. So the first thing, and you put this in, Garrett, is the board control aspect. But board control in this version, it's a little bit different, because you don't really play the board control game until the turn before the quest is about to be completed.
Well,
right?
that's what I mean.
Yeah.
You and I we talked a lot about this, on our Slack channel. Leading up to this, and that's it. You want to control the board, but not from the beginning. You want to wait, when you see it, because you can see it coming. There's literally a counter that shows you when it's about to complete.
But you can't really control the board to stop the quest, because, like, Joss was saying, if they don't bounce the minion that they're trying to get played 4 times, then they're just playing bad. They're just making mistakes.
Yeah.
They will generally always never let you kill that minion. So the key is, stop spending, 15 damage killing 1/1s at the beginning of the game, because those 1/1s are the ones that don't matter, right? Put that damage to the face, get them really low, and then once the quest is complete, then you can use like Consecration, Holy Nova, Brawl, whatever it is, to get that board clear before they play the quest. And then they have to spend 5 mana on the quest, which means they won't probably play a whole bunch of minions that next turn.
Unless they prep.
And then you continue to like push face damage after that.
Yeah.
Try to finish them off.
Prep is a big thing though, and it does it does feel like when you have that when you lose against one and you're feeling bad, it feels like they always have prep, but they don't always have prep.
But that's one of those things. It's like sometimes freeze mages have the second ice block, and you're just like, couldn't beat him. He had he just had the card he needed. That's gonna happen.
Sir, I had my 4th ice block with Jocelyn's secret mage this week.
You can't play around things like that necessarily, and you shouldn't really. Like that's one of those make them have it kind of things where like, yeah, they had prep. Okay, he won the game because of that. But you can still make the best decision to raise your percentage of winning.
Right. And even in that scenario, if they have prep, it's going to be a lot better for you if you cleared the board before they cast it. Like at least they didn't have minions on board that turn.
Exactly. They have to have charge minions in hand to really then take advantage of that, right? So, and they don't always have that either. Like this is the thing. It's like sometimes they draw perfect and they run you over. Yes, But I've had a really good win percentage against the Quest Rogue because I've just kind of adjusted how I play against them. It's like be more aggressive early on, force them to, to feel like they don't have time to do all of this stuff that they're trying to do, right? Like cut down the amount of time that they have. So, and you can do that with anything, right? Like if you can just kind of curve out a little bit with even a slower control deck, or like that Taunt Warrior, you're still putting minions on the board almost every turn. You just push that face damage, and then all you have to do is get a little bit lucky towards the end and find, that last little burst that you need, and you can finish them off. So the other thing too is if you're a priest or a warlock, and a lot of warlocks aren't running the Felfire, hold on to that 5 damage AOE from the beginning, like mulligan for that card, because that card is like crucial, right? Kill one of their big boards, and oftentimes they can't reload.
So I was playing obviously a lot of Zoo, Disco Zoo, and what I was doing was just controlling the board from the get-go. And what I've been doing lately is just going face with my minions, and I don't trade with my minions until again I treat my minions like that AOE, except they're on board hitting face until it's time to trade.
Yeah, and then all of a sudden, turn 5, turn 6, you're like, oh, the quest is done. Let's kill all these 1/1s, because I'm basically killing 5/5s now.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, exactly.
But I'm doing it for free. So the other thing you posted here, which is super true, is don't just kill that Igneous Elemental, right? They play it, and then you're like, oh, I should Shadow Word Pain that. It's like, no. Let them run it into something, because that's what they're trying to do. Like, you could keep going face while it's there. If they get a chance to kill it, fair enough. But don't do it for them, right?
Yeah. Yeah, so like what I've been doing with that on like my Disco Zoo is that if it's out, obviously I don't have a transform as a warlock. I don't put my wolf next to my Voidwalker. I force them to run it into the Voidwalker 3 times if they really want to kill that Igneous Elemental. And then obviously if I'm playing Shaman or something, I hex it. Like what else is your hex target? I mean, honestly, in that deck, I mean, later on it might be one of the many 5/5s.
But even then, if you hex something, then the frog's just a 5/5, right?
It is a 5/5.
I'm talking earlier in the game, because a lot of people are dropping a lot of. I mean, right now the most common way to complete your quest is with the elemental tokens off of both the Firefly and the Igneous Elemental. So people are dropping the Igneous Elemental, hoping that you go and kill them. It's the number one mistake I've seen today in the many games I already logged. People, I put it out and people kill it, and I'm just like, why? It's 2 damage. Let it ping you. Ignore it. Damage me.
Well, it's not even going to hit your face anyway, because if you're playing the Quest Rogue, you're trying to run it into minions as soon as possible and have it die, right? So
yeah, exactly.
It's not a threat at all. You just let it do its thing if you can't deal with it. I've seen people teching in some silences again, too. I saw some more Spellbreakers than I expected, because that's another way around
all over the place.
Silence it. So
well, and especially with Taunt Warrior being so popular and having a lot of potential like Death Rattle or Adapt effects, I've seen a lot of people running 1, sometimes even 2 silence effects, whether it's owls or Spellbreakers or whatever. I'm just like, really? This is insane.
Yeah, that slowed down around rank 5 for me, but I did see it a lot on the way up, where people were teching in all sorts of weird stuff, trying to combat all this stuff that's going on. But and then of course we should just point out that the last like direct counter to this deck, which is always going to keep it in check, is aggro. As long as aggro is a thing, then this quest was never going to become like patrons. I mean, patrons could actually deal with aggro because they would build up all that armor, right? And you remember that they had the armor smiths and stuff, and not to mention the fact that they're just warriors, and the fact that they run cycle like shield block.
Yeah, shield block. Yep.
They were definitely a deck that could deal with aggro. This rogue deck cannot deal with aggro because it's just trying to get the quest done. And once it does, then it kind of can because of Bilefin Tidehunter. But until that, all of its minions are so weak. You just punch face, and they die. So this is going to always keep it in check. And they don't run healing. There's 0 healing. So if you're like a mage, start sending your burn up top, and they'll die.
The best tool I've had to like try and survive against pirate warriors is Glacial Shard in the early game. Using it, if they drop anything that actually has substantial attack power, freeze it until you complete your quest.
Well, I had this game today. I mentioned in the Slack that I was at, I think, 4 or 5 health or something like that, facing down an Arcanite Reaper, and that 5/4 dude that makes your weapon stronger and stuff like he had pressure on the board.
Captain
and
Greenskin,
I
you
mimic
mean?
pod
Or
the pirate 5/4 dude. I can't remember his name. Yeah, but so I Mimic Pod into double Glacial Shard. And I was like, sweet. So I cast the quest, I freeze everything, and I put up a Bilefin Tidehunter, and then he just conceded. So it was like, but I mean, that's, like I said, that's why this deck feels like Freeze Mage to me, is because you are just so low and so behind, and then you barely come back, right? But that, you know, that kind of stuff can definitely happen. But that's like, I was supposed to lose that game. I really was supposed to lose that game. And almost outside of me getting really lucky with a Mimic Pod, there was no way I was going to win.
And also, guys, we're sitting here talking about playing a 1-mana choose a minion and freeze it minion in a rogue deck. Like, I'm not saying that you should look at the game the way I do as an answer to your frustrations with maybe this deck in particular, but I'm just telling you I'm less frustrated with this deck in particular because I get excited about the fact that I'm playing a freaking 2-1 that freezes a single minion in a rogue, and it turns out it's a really cool piece of tech in this deck. I geek out about that.
No, I mean, the fact that Boar is a thing is just pretty good. Novice Engineer and all that stuff. Like that's what this whole expansion has really done. You know, Medivh's Valet is having a huge comeback right now. All these cards that we thought were absolutely awful for so long and just never made their way into any deck. This rotation, and a lot of it has to do with the fact that some really powerful cards at those mana slots went out. But there's a lot of cards that have a lot of use in one type of deck, right? And they are key pieces to that deck working. And that's very cool. That's what I want to see in card games, right? It's like, this card sucks unless you play it in this deck and pair it with all of these cards, right? So that's pretty cool. I did see a thing with Ixar where he talked about how Stone Tusk Boar has actually been a card that has impacted card design more than we might think. The player, like they've crafted some cards, and then they're testing it, and then somebody puts a Stone Tusk Boar in the deck with it, and then they go, oh wait, well, this doesn't.
Nope.
No, this is broken. We can't do this.
Oops, guys, we forgot. We have a 1-mana 1/1 charge. It's
Yep.
Yep. All right, nix that idea.
Yeah, exactly. And that's kind of crazy to me because it's just it's been a meme, right? That card's been a meme forever.
Yep. This show could have very easily been called the Stone Tusk Boar instead of the Angry Chicken.
Boar. Not as good as the Angry Chicken.
No,
but...
the Angry Chicken's way better.
Yeah, it's more fun name. More fun name. So, plus
but,
right now.
Yeah, so overall, I think Quest Rogue is, for everybody who's complaining and saying it's definitely going to get nerfed. I don't think it's going to get nerfed at all. If you were to nerf it to like 5, bounce it, play 5, it would be completely unplayable. I think 4 is actually just about right, and I think it's a deck that is healthy for the game to exist. So you may disagree, and that's fine, but I really do believe like a deck like this is important to have as an option. I think in this current meta, like you still have the aggro options, you have these heavy control options. This is kind of like a mid-rangey combo-y type option that is weird and different than everything else. So.
I'm fairly certain Ixar actually put out a statement and basically said, like, Team 5 is watching it. They don't have any plans.
Yeah.
It's fine. They don't have any plans to nerf it. Yeah, so.
Yep. It was this one and Time Warp were the ones that they were really concerned with. And so far, both of them have ended up being totally okay. Like, it takes so long to actually get them done and such a specific build you have to make to allow that to happen that it just, just works out that in the end, like it's different than like a deck. So it feels bad to lose against, but it also feels really rewarding to beat it because you feel like you solved the puzzle. So yeah, you might feel bad when you lose to it, but it's like in the hands of a really good player, Patron Warrior was oppressive. In the hands of a really good player, I don't think this deck will ever be oppressive. It's going to be always like a decent deck with good matchups and a lot of terrible ones, and that's okay. That's where a deck should be.
Yeah, and like going all the way back to the beginning of the show, and it was like, these YouTube comments, man, really wrestle my jimmies. Some of these folks on the YouTube, but they have a point. There is a chance weeks from now, months from now, we might come on the show and be like, okay, guys, I'm kind of done with seeing Quest Rogue, and that might come, but right now. I want to enjoy the game. I want to get excited about it. I am excited about it. I am enjoying it. I am enjoying this deck. I'm enjoying playing against this deck. I'm sorry I don't hate the game immediately like many of you out there.
Yeah, and look, it's, again, like the problem with Patron was just that it had very few bad matchups and was just so powerful And this is why all the pros love that deck, because they were like, give me this deck and I can never lose. It's great because I play real good. And, that's why Blizzard felt like they had to change the deck. Because then a lot of people were like, I don't get it. Why does everyone say this deck's so good? I can't win at all with it. Because you don't play perfect, right? And Quest Rogue, again, it's like if you play perfect, you'll do pretty well with it. If you are not quite perfect, it's going to be hard to win.
Yeah, and it still has bad matchups. Like Patron Warrior was just like, it could win every game, which felt a whole lot actually like Miracle Rogue, especially with like the unnerfed pirate package. It just felt like you could win against anything. Yeah. Whereas, Quest Rogue, there are some ways to counter it, and it's actually fine.
There are a lot of matchups where if I'm playing Quest Rogue, I'm like, oh man, this is going to be almost impossible. Yeah. By the way, we should also point out that one of the other cool things, and this is not something we need to stick on for a long time, but one of the coolest things about Un'Goro is that almost every class has multiple viable archetypes right now. So when you see Rogue, it can very well be this, or it could very well be the new Miracle Rogue that's been really popular as well. So it's cool to see multiple archetypes, because I think with Gadget Zan, every single class basically had one kind of way to play it. And so you saw Druid and you said, okay, Jades, here we go. And, you saw Rogue and you knew Miracle. And so, this is healthy that there's options.
Shaman was the only one. It was like, probably Jade, but maybe not.
Oh, yeah. Shaman had multiples. Yeah, could be aggro still. Could be Jade.
Yeah.
By the way, Shaman, fall from grace indeed. If you were hoping Shaman would have an issue, they did. We were concerned, like, oh no, Shaman can do everything still. They can still do Jade. They can do Elementals. Turns out that they're just a middling deck right now.
Yeah.
Yay!
Elemental's okay. Elemental Shaman's all right, but
it's fine.
Well,
but it's not OP.
It's all right. It's not overwhelmingly the only thing you come up against on ladder.
Nope, not at all. Not at all. Turns out Hunter, from my personal experience, is the most common class I come up against, and even then, I don't know what the hell they're gonna do. Sometimes that quest still comes up, and I'm like, really? That's what you're going for?
Interesting.
And then man, we were so excited about that quest too. All right, so I'm looking at the Tempo Storm meta snapshot, and you don't see Shaman until tier 3.
Feels good, man.
Yeah.
Not that their word is carved into stone, but I gotta say, I think I agree with that.
Yeah, I think it's right. I think it's So it's pretty close.
All right, well, let's move on then. We haven't done this in a while. Let's get into Crazy Game Story.
Is the whole world gone crazy?
You're in trouble now.
You got it!
You can send your crazy game stories or emails, whatever it is, to tacpodcast@gmail.com. Progenitus writes in this week and says, "My dear Cluckos," which I love. Haven't heard that one before, and if I have, I forgot about it. So, Progenitus says, "Let me paint you a picture. Our hero, Tyrande, cloaked in deep purple from the shadow form of her Kazakus quest deck, and a small yellow tear-shaped glow guiding her. The foe, Jaina, surrounded by the blue glow of arcane light and the yellow hue of her own quest lighting her way. There's fear emanating from Tyrande. She knows Amara will be of no help to her in this battle. Her only hope rests in more purple, the soft glow of a mage secret gifted by the remains of her crystalline oracle. The battle wears on, and Jaina completes her quest. Her purpose is known. She only must choose when to strike. Tyrande's heartbeat rises. She knows she must finish this soon, or be left a pile of ash or broken by the fists of giants. However, her minions continue to be frozen in place. No recourse is available. Her own quest finally completes, but Amara in hand provides little comfort. Finally, it begins. But not in the way Tyrande expected. Suddenly, a rotating beam of light appears on the battlefield. She wondered the last time she'd actually seen one of these little guys. The Alarmobot sat idly, waiting for something to trip its sensors. It would not take long. Time Warp was cast by Jaina, signaling the end of times. Onto the battlefield comes the aspect of magic himself, Malygos. Suddenly, a flurry of red and blue flies at Tyrande. Fireball, fireball, frostbolt. This was surely enough damage to end all but the most armored of warriors. But no, the purple glow of the mage secret that Tyrande had stole finally pops. Ice block. Hope. Jaina passes turn. Malagos is dealt with by the board. Amara heals the singed priest plus more, and the mage has run out of damage. A concession immediately follows. I hope y'all enjoyed this. I had quite the laugh when it was all said and done. My God, the way you wrote this. Just top-notch Crazy Game Story.
Right?
Yeah, this is some A+ CGS right here.
Well, it's been a while, so I thought it would be good to start off with like some deep Hearthstone RP.
Well done, Progenitus. Really, this is
Yeah, it's pretty cool for people to be thinking of these as like these epic battles, right?
Yeah.
Pretty fun.
It's solid. It's solid. Before we move on to emails, let's thank our patrons. Of many badass folks over there at patreon.com/TAC supporting our show with dollars, sometimes cents, but every little bit counts, and we really do appreciate it. On this episode, thank you to Nicholas G, Scott P, Damian E, Matt D, Christopher B, Jared M, and Chris C. Thank you all so much for the support.
All last names given.
Yes. None left to the imagination.
Real humans.
Yeah, and I don't think no handles either. Nothing that, no one wins a name game this week because you just all have normal, beautiful names given to you by your mothers and fathers. So, well done, everyone. Thank you for the support. If you enjoy Angry Chicken and you would like to support it, check out patreon.com/TAC. Now, let's wrap it up with some emails.
Hello?
Hello, it's me.
Hello?
Just quickly, do you get my message?
Yep.
Oh.
Hello, brother.
You can send your emails to the same exact place, tacpodcast@gmail.com. Our first one comes to us from, I know it's 007. I know it's 007 because this is a longtime listener of The Angry Chicken, a patron of multiple shows that I do. But the way this particular listener spells their handle is DBLOH7 with the second E missing. So my brain always sees this, even though I know what it's referencing, and goes DBLO7. Every time. Every damn time. So I hope you're okay with me riffing on it. I'm going to refer to you as DBLO7 and say, hello, TAC. With Tempo Storm's first meta report after Ungoro, only 3 decks in the top 20 are quest decks. That's 3 quests out of 9 that are considered competitive. Is it safe to say quests have not had the impact Blizzard was expecting and are more of a gimmick? No, damn it, it's 2 weeks in. It's too early to say.
Yeah, I don't think it's safe to say that, but it's definitely safe to say that the quests are not the end-all, be-all of Ungoro. Like a lot of people were complaining about when they were opening their packs, and they're like, I only got 1 quest. It's like, well, the good news is you don't need all the quests because there's a ton of the decks where the quest is actually the worst version of the deck. Like, think of Jungle Giants, right? The Druid one.
The Druid one.
Everybody was like, oh, man, look at this. It's crazy. I get Barnabas, and then all my minions cost 0. It's like, well, it turns out by the time you get to the late game where you would have completed the quest, you don't need them to cost 0 because you just have a lot of mana and you play big minions every turn anyway, right? So you could still ramp Druid, you just don't actually need the minions that cost 0. So Disco Warlock didn't work out, Hunter didn't work out.
Yeah.
You know, tons of these did not work out.
So far has not worked out. I
far.
still believe in Wild Warlock that there will be a mid-rangey / control deck that will want to play that quest, but it just hasn't been ironed out yet.
That
and
is
Paladin
a good
really didn't work.
Yeah, there is a good distinction to make here, though, because like when we're talking about Tempo Storm and their meta snapshot, like this is standard. There are plenty, I think, of wild decks that are probably people aren't even spending their time figuring them out yet, right? Like generally, I think the general Hearthstone population jumps in a new standard year and goes to play standard ladder. So I think there's a lot of things to still be figured out on the wild side, and there's probably a lot of quests that aren't necessarily amazing in standard that are actually going to be very, very good in wild. So there's still a ton of time to figure things out on both sides, and wild is still a place, guys.
Yeah, 100%.
Wild is very much a place right now. It is super cool over there.
And even if you are, like a Tempo Storm, faithful, they do have a wild meta snapshot as well. It just is not updated as regularly. As a matter of fact, I haven't checked it.
I don't think that there's an Ungoro one yet. Is there?
No, there isn't.
One yet.
There's not an Ungoro meta snapshot for Tempo Storm. So, I mean, we've just been talking standard mostly lately because, well, it's new stuff. So why not? Let's get in there. Let's talk about the the format where things like Reno no longer exist because we've spent enough time talking about Mr. Reno Jackson. But yeah, man, I don't know. I think it landed about where I was hoping it would land, which is some quests good, some quests not so good, or at least not out the gate. But I still have some hope for creativity down the line.
Well, the other thing to remember too is that we're going to get 2 more expansions this year.
Mm-hmm.
Some of these quests are going to suddenly become real good, and some of the quests that were real good are suddenly going to be real bad, and there's going to be some movement, right?
Yep.
So, like,
there's some design space there, I think,
Yeah.
which is really exciting.
Like, think about, like, Yasharaj was completely useless for a long time, and then suddenly at the end of Mean Streets of Gadgetzan, here came Goya Shaman, that was utilizing Yasharaj in a top-tier deck, right? And it took another couple expansions and some real tinkering before people figured out the deck that was actually good in. So we'll see these come in and out as the expansions come, and that's the way it should be. I think not every card should be strong out of the gate every single time, and cards should be like you should be able to like find ways to tinker with them down the road, right?
Yeah,
and we've seen it already with this expansion. So.
And I think overall, if we're talking about like power levels of mechanics, I think this is more successful and has more design space than like Joust, but probably a little bit less successful than something like Discover. But I also feel like Discover is probably the way they should have handled RNG in the game from the get-go. So
Discover
was
very
just
clearly like the best
amazing.
mechanic that they've
Yeah.
ever put out since the beginning
since
of
vanilla,
the game.
yeah. So D Blow 7. I put this out there only because our listeners are really good at remembering stuff years on end and then bringing it up later. Ask us just before Ungoro leaves Standard if we think quests were a success or a gimmick.
Yeah.
We'll let you know how it shakes out when more cards are added. Dills, who was our next email from?
This comes from Canis Shamus. Or Canis Shamus? I don't know. Maybe I'm supposed to be trying to rhyme. Greeting Grumpy Gallus. Okay. Have to look that one up. First off, I want to thank you for the great show you put out. Listening to your advice on strategy helped me out so much when I first started to play this game. Second, I wanted to comment on the recent change being made to correct the bug in the new set regarding the infinite loop that can be created with shadow visions. I think it's a positive change, but I don't think it goes far enough. I badly want them to change all cards that add a random card to your hand so they can't find themselves. No more Cabal Couriers discovering Cabal Couriers or Cabalist Tomes that somehow give 3 more Cabalist Tomes. Even this early in the meta, it seems that cards like Stonehill Defender, Servant of Calamos, and Primordial Glyph can create some extremely unfun games if they keep discovering themselves. Already players are frustrated when they lose to RNG. Losing to infinite RNG seems like one of the few things that feels worse. Anyways, thoughts, comments, strong emotions. Once again, thank you for the great show. A certain part of me is okay with that idea. A certain part of me really likes the idea that crazy stuff can happen, right?
I really like, because of spell synergy, the fact that you could find the same spell again, because it's really good for some classes, and other classes just ignore it entirely because you're doing nothing but wasting mana.
But so like if you play like Commander, Magic the Gathering, a lot of decks are built around finding like 5 cards that all create some infinite combo. And it's just something that is like, it's like this kind of holy grail of like building your crazy deck where you like put all these cards together and you're like, man, if I could ever draw all of them together, look at this thing I could do. And that's a really fun feeling to like kind of seek out when it actually works. It's really cool. The key is don't have it work really easily. So I could definitely see that maybe there's a little bit of an issue with like sometimes how easy these things seem to happen, or that they don't happen because you did something very specific. They happen because you got lucky and RNG went in your favor, right? But there is like a possibility you could set your deck up so that you get Lyra out, and then you continue to Shadow Visions into Shadow Visions and keep making new spells, and okay, there's some stuff there, but if you can like find a way to do it and it's really tricky, that's very cool. So I could see that there's an issue with the fact that it's kind of RNG based, not deck building based. So that would be the only thing. But again, this is why we have the crazy game story segment, right? Is because when crazy stuff happens, you remember it. And if you take away the ability for crazy stuff to happen, I think the game just becomes less fun. And absolutely, there's frustrating moments there, but there's also really fun, cool moments too.
Yeah, for me, it's an animation issue. I think I think they should have kept it so the Shadow Visions could find itself, but they should have just not let animations cannibalize your turn. I'm sure that's harder to accomplish than we probably could ever think, because they probably would have done that otherwise. But and in that case, you could still troll, I guess, by just continuing to play it. But
yeah. By the way, the quest complete animation is just the slowest damn thing ever.
Yes.
Right.
And I would really like them to speed that up just a touch, because
Please.
I had a game where I was on my phone. I was at Zix's house, and I'm having a conversation. And all of a sudden I realized, like, oh, rope's burning. And I look down. I have 4 flame elementals and prep to do the quest all in one turn. So I, like, spam all the dudes out, and then I hit prep. Like, already, I pre-hit the prep. And then the friggin' rope burns while the animation for the quest popping goes off, and I burn the prep.
Yep.
And I don't have it the next turn, and it was just like, damn it! Like, I was doing all the stuff to do the quest, and it just took like 10 seconds to finish the quest thing. So,
and this is why
that animation could be sped up just a little bit.
This is why we're doing a fundraiser to buy Dill's a new phone after he broke it.
Yeah, smash. Done with this game. No, it was. I mean, it's just those are the little. But it's my own fault. I was in a conversation, not paying attention to the game. But still, that's a super slow animation, man.
Yeah. Just who's our final email from?
Our final email comes to us from James, who says, my question is simple. What does Blizzard need to do? I check the news related to Hearthstone daily, and all I see are complaints. It was pirates, now it's the cost of playing a CCG. Who knows what's next? As someone who only pre-orders the set and doesn't purchase additional packs, I understand the feeling of wanting more cards, but I also understand the concept of a CCG. Hearthstone isn't by any means perfect, but overall, I love the game, and I feel like Blizzard has been doing so much more to reach out to the community as of late. So what's the issue? Is the media putting everything in a negative light when things are actually okay? Is everyone playing the game just a selfish person wanting a free handout? Or is the game actually in a bad place and Blizzard needs to make some big changes? It's been hard to maintain a positive attitude towards the game when it seems like everyone else hates it. I would love to hear all of your thoughts on this. So I think we've kind of given our thoughts a little bit on, the previous shows about the costs and stuff, but oh man, the number of emails and stuff that we got about costs of CCGs and Hearthstone in particular was crazy. But the part of this email that I really thought was interesting to touch on is basically I'm finding the same thing now, is even like news stories from like my gaming news outlets seem to be doing the same thing and being super duper negative. And it can be really hard to keep a positive attitude about Hearthstone, even if you're enjoying the game, when as soon as you go out of the game itself into the community, all of a sudden everything's really negative. So, because I know there was an article last week from a journalist that I really like, from a publication that I read often. I didn't even get through the first paragraph because I was just like, oh my God, this is like you're just copy pasting from Reddit. Like, stop. It's not that bad. What's going on? So do you guys have the same sort of feeling that like even the media is being really negative right now?
Hey, Joss, I think I know exactly what you're talking about because I had the exact same damn reaction.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, me too.
Yep. 100.
I responded because I got linked somewhere and I was like, I think they're trying to come off as like, here's some salacious information you didn't know. And I was like, I find all of this not salacious at all. It's like, I find all of this totally expected and how I thought Hearthstone should be.
So I feel like usually we try to show both sides of the coin.
Yes.
This episode and previous episode, we probably haven't, as much as anyone who disagrees with us thinks we probably should. But I don't know. There's a certain point where, like, I feel so strongly. It's like I just find it difficult. I find it difficult to, like, we're not journalists. We're here doing a fan podcast. Mm-hmm. We're doing a weekly show about Hearthstone because guess what? We like the game.
Well, I would say we're a combination of the two. I think absolutely we do a show because we love the game, but we have become over time, over the multiple years of doing this, more journalistic than we probably started out, right?
Yes,
no, you're absolutely right. And 3 months ago, the complaints coming into our inbox about the show was the exact opposite, saying, why do you even do the show anymore? Because you're so negative. So, like, I don't know. There's an ebb and flow with this game.
Well, we're just gonna be who we are, and
Right.
and if you don't like it, sorry. But like for me, it's like, yeah, I agree. Like, Jocelyn, like I'm in the game having a friggin' blast,
Mm-hmm.
and then you like go, let's see if there's a new deck on Reddit, and then you click over to Reddit, and you're like, everyone
My
hates this game. And you're like,
Yeah.
why? There was something wrong with me. Why am I having so much fun? But I think the reality is you like what you like, and if you have the mentality that I think a lot of us have, which is like this is a card game that happens to be mobile, not like a mobile game that happens to be a card game. I really think that that's how it is. Like it's not like this is a Clash of Battle Royale, whatever. This is Hearthstone. This could be a printed card game outside of the fact that RNG stuff.
Well, yeah,
is all built
there are
in.
some mechanics that.
But it would be,
difficult.
I would be like, this is a great game. It doesn't have to exist on my iPhone for it to be a great game. So I look at it as a card game, and that adjusts my perception of cost, I think, in a different way maybe than some people are letting it.
Yeah, and this is not exclusive to Hearthstone. This happens in pretty much every damn game subreddit, every damn game's official forums. Yep. The only reason I think I'm personally having such a strong reaction to the negative feedback right now is because it's so close to release of the expansion.
It happened real quick.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why at the beginning when I was complaining about smug YouTube comments, like it really tilted me because it literally just came out and I've been receiving tweets, emails, and YouTube comments, all of which seem to be people who are angry that I am happy. And that's just the most ridiculous thing. And the other, what the sickest thing is, and I have a really weird analogy that's going to bring up an HBO series in a second, is that I kind of get it. Because Dills, you loved season 2 of True Detective, and I think it's the biggest piece of shit I've ever seen. So much to the fact that when you and I start talking about it, after I'm done, I realize I was just trying to convince you that something that brought you joy was crap, and that's not a person I want to be.
Yeah, like one of my big. If you've been a fan of me and all the shows I do for a long time, then you probably have heard me talk about this. But like the biggest thing in anything that I hate is like snobbery and telling other people what they should and shouldn't like. Right? Like it's just if you don't like Hearthstone, that's fair enough. But when you start telling other people that they shouldn't like Hearthstone either, then I'm not on board anymore. Like me and you aren't having an honest conversation anymore because I'm not going to sit here and argue with you about that. So I'll tell you why I like it. You can tell me why you hate it, and then we can go our separate ways, and that's fine.
Yeah.
But it's just like, the sheer amount of like people trying to force their own opinion down everyone else's throats is just it's frustrating. And it's a little bit it's like unbecoming of what I think is a pretty good community in most respects.
Yeah.
And then just like a few vocal asshats like kind of make it out to be some terrible place, right?
Yeah, these aren't the conversations we have when we go to DreamHack, when we go to BlizzCon. We're not. It doesn't get announced, and we're just like, oh my god, what a piece of crap! Like I can't believe it, and they didn't fix that and this and whatsoever. I mean, yeah, every now and then we have an honest conversation about something we would really like changed about the game when we're at these live events. But overall, everyone's just excited. Everyone starts theory crafting with what they can do with even if it was like 7 cards or whatever the pathetic amount of things that they showed at BlizzCon last year was. There's still this sense of excitement, and everyone there has a vested interest, and I don't think there's enough of that. It's a vocal majority, right? There's more people. There's obviously more people out there playing the game that are enjoying it than are on Reddit posting about how much they enjoy it, because the number. Yeah. We know roughly the number of people that play this game. We know roughly the number of subscribers to the Hearthstone subreddit, and it is tiny compared to the overall Hearthstone player number. And that's a point that I would like to see mentioned when legitimate video game news websites report on this kind of thing, because I don't think it's bad that they're reporting on it. I think 2 days after the launch of an expansion for a Blizzard game, and their number one subreddit with a ton of subscribers is pretty much nothing but a doom-saying powwow, that should be reported on. But also maybe mention that, hey, these kind of communities are and have always been a vocal minority.
Yeah.
Minority, yeah.
If you read any subreddit, you'll you will find people who think that it's the dumbest thing ever, the thing that they're on a subreddit for. Like, why are you here?
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
What are you doing?
Well, and
You
I
know?
think the thing is, it used to be that there would be maybe, even in the really bad days, it would be maybe 3/4 of the subreddit that would be negative, and we would kind of paint Reddit overall as a kind of negative place to be, and that was unfortunate. But now I find that it is almost all negative on the specific Hearthstone subreddit. I mean, the forums have always been kind of painted with the same brush as the Reddit, but now I'm finding that it's like, it's Twitter and it's news outlets and it's, you know, kind of everybody being super negative. And I'm like, am I missing some gigantic chunk of information or something? Like, I just turn the game on and have fun. And I think I'm missing, like, why people are super upset. Because to me, it doesn't seem like too much of the game itself has changed, except in a positive light. So did you always hate the game? Are you just being vocal now? And, you know, are you moving from, you just used to post on Reddit but now you're everywhere? Like, I don't understand. It seems to be spreading, and I also don't think it's Hearthstone specific. I think it's kind of across a lot of different platforms, but it just seems like everything is extraordinarily negative right now, and I don't understand what's happening. I guess, and I agree with the sentiment of James, our emailer. Like, what does Blizzard need to do? Like, what do they have to do to make you guys happy?
They might not have to do anything. to be
They-
honest.
nothing.
I mean, it's,
Well, yeah, they do.
Yeah, they need to keep doing what they are doing, which is soldiering on in spite of people who like call into question like things about Ben Bro's life that no one has the right to be speaking on.
I think there's a lot of people where it's like been a slow march towards disliking the game from what they found to be amazing in vanilla, right? And that's going to happen. And then there are people who are like newer to the game, who came in to a culture that was already like somewhat toxic and just kind of latched onto that and are just, you know, kind of raising the pitchforks because everyone else is doing it and they think it's cool. There's a combination, right? It's not everyone's coming at it and being negative from the same perspective. But I do think that if I was to take an impartial look at the game, I would say it's okay for us to be having a blast because the game is super fun if you if you play it the way we do, which is a little more on the hardcore side than probably most people. And it's also okay to acknowledge that there could be things done better. It's okay to acknowledge both of those things, right? And the people who are looking at it objectively do acknowledge both of those things. Like, I would love to see login rewards continue to help out some of the players who can't spend as much money and feel like it's too high of a mountain to climb. I absolutely believe that's true. I would love to see general rewards in Arena go up a tiny bit, because it's true. There's so many more cards now than there was in Vanilla. It doesn't make sense necessarily to keep using the same model, right? So, like, the game has evolved. It might also be time for them to evolve some of the structures that the game was built on early on, just to kind of fit more in with what would work better now. And that's fine. Like, that's absolutely, and we will continue to kind of point out the things that we think they could do better. But we are definitely not going to sit here and tone down the sheer joy and enthusiasm we have for what's currently the greatest expansion Hearthstone has ever had. So, you know, if you don't want to hear us be joyful when we're having fun with the game, then you probably want to skip like the next 2 to 3 months
Yeah.
of the show.
That might be
And
I don't
only
see it
come back
going
if
away.
the next expansion is truly awful.
that might be
man,
that
at
might
this
be
point, I don't think
generous.
it's gonna happen.
If I'm seeing Quest Rogue, in 3 out of 4 games within the next month, I'm going to start complaining. But
Sure. And
But I
that
don't
would
think
be
that's
that would
gonna
be
be the
totally a viable complaint at that point.
yeah. But we'll see what happens. And I do have to say, because I do feel we've been a little unfair to the Hearthstone subreddit, and that's right, that's coming from me, the guy who loves shit on Reddit more than anyone else. I think, at least for me, like, I'm thinking about it, like, I'm looking at it right now, and I'm like, why do I just zone in on the negative on the subreddit? I think it's because there's actually a lot of fun stuff on the Reddit, but a lot of it is like the 6th post about a Savitz highlight today. And it's like, you know what?
Yeah.
I'm on the up and up on Savitz. I'm aware about what Savitz is doing. I don't need it on the subreddit. So I just ignore that, and then I focus on like the other stuff that seems unique to the subreddit, and it can get pretty negative pretty fast. So I think there's still plenty of people who enjoy and want to embrace and celebrate Hearthstone on the subreddit. Maybe it's just folks like us who are a little more tapped into the community kind of miss that stuff because we're already aware of it, and instead focus in on the the loud, angry mobs.
Yep,
So,
I'm with you.
Those are my
But yeah,
thoughts.
I mean, to really
It's-
answer the question, Blizzard shouldn't only address people with negative feedback. They have to address everybody.
They should get extremely combative and have a very bad PR system.
Yeah.
That's what they should do. They should start
tell
like
you all that you suck.
Yep.
This game
Yep.
is the best.
the next dev insight should just be Ben Bro with his middle finger up to the webcam for a good 10 minutes and just loop that on YouTube.
Doesn't even say anything, just stone faced.
No, but he'd be doing the Ben Bro laugh the whole time.
Oh,
Yeah.
the only thing that would make that better is if he was like sitting on a pile of gold coins, like Scrooge McDuck, just sitting on his pile of money, just giving you
Yeah.
the finger and laughing.
Yeah. Yep. 100%. 100%.
I do want to point out something that maybe some people who are newer to the show might miss, but like we really do try to see all the sides, and that was like I personally have put in like a lot of work to try to feel the feeling of a free-to-play player and a new player. Like I created other accounts and I actually play them, and I get the feeling of not having all the cards. So I totally understand that, and that is not lost on us at all. We do understand that can be tough. So I mean, there's a lot of legendaries in this set. Like I don't have the friggin' flower dude for Rogue yet, and I really want him. I don't have Lyra yet, and I really want her too. But I understand that I spent my $100 and my 3,000 gold or whatever. This is what I got. This is the limit. I'm not going to spend any more on Ungoro. Over time, eventually, I will have those cards. You'll feel better if you think of it more as a process rather than like, gimme now. So anybody out there who is kind of struggling with a little negativity, try to just like adjust your adjust like your kind of outlook on it, and maybe you'll feel happier. I want you to feel happy. I want everybody out there to feel happy. I don't like that you guys are not feeling good. That sucks.
Yeah, I agree.
And that's all.
And granted, to those listening out there, get it. If you're free to play, you're going to have a much longer journey than Bills to complete your Ungoro
My
set,
journey will be fairly short, but I have to start my journey for the next expansion too. Like when the next expansion hits, if I'm going to do the same thing, $100 plus a lot of gold, I can't spend all my gold on packs right now, right?
Yeah, which will be Journey to the Nexus, because that little teaser image we got looks like Arcane Magic, and I'm just assuming it's that. Not the Heroes of the Storm Nexus, but the Nexus as it exists in Northrend in World of Warcraft. But yeah. Anyways, boy, that's a wonderful topic that just doesn't have an end or an actual answer. Let's talk about feelings. So, thanks for writing in, James. I'm glad you're enjoying the game. And
we are too.
And I'm sorry if you're out there and you're not enjoying the game. I'm not one of you, sadly. At least not right now. Talk to me in 3 months, when things are getting stale. I'll gladly share a beer with you and complain about how I still really wish there was a second arena mode with a little more nuance. So, anyways, that's going to do it for this episode. Thank you all so much for listening. Even you, smug YouTube commenters. Even you. I'm sure I'll hear from you very soon.
Poor Garrett, so tilted.
It was just this one thing. It was just like, it's pretty soon they'll be complaining about Quest. Like, that's not the point. There's a thing called time, and it's linear, and my opinion changes. Whatever the case is, thank you to our patrons supporting us at patreon.com/TAC. Thank you to our producers, Declan H., Peter Williams. I got to meet Declan finally this weekend at Star Wars Celebration. He is one of the coolest dudes I've ever met. He's also so jacked, I thought he was going to just like break me in half like Conan the Barbarian. Turns out, absolutely like one of us, total nerd, just wanted to talk about tabletop games and what deck I was playing in Hearthstone. Super cool guy, and he's coming. I hear he's coming to BlizzCon, so hopefully we'll get to all hang out with him. And Peter always comes to BlizzCon, so we'll get to see him this year. TAC coffee mugs and glasses are for sale at etch.amove.tv. Our t-shirts are for sale at shirts.amove.tv. The Twitter for the show is at TAC Podcast, and usually you can catch us live on Tuesdays at 4 p.m. Eastern over at twitch.tv/amovetv. Do not on Monday this week. Dills is traveling tomorrow. So if you want a show to watch tomorrow, check out For Azeroth with Jocelyn and I. We'll be talking World of Warcraft in the morning. So check that out. Also, you can catch us live virtually on just about any device thanks to alphageekmedia.com. Other than that, I'll pass it over to the Dills.
So streaming this week will be a little sporadic. But you can still check it out, twitch.tv/WillyDills. I'm going to try to get as many streams in as I can, but like Garrett said, I'm going to be on the move a little bit. But you can expect a few, and then next week we'll get back to our normally scheduled programming. Also on Twitter at Willie Dills. So, and also the DHL just finished. So the weekend after DreamHack, you can expect the top 8 tournament will be casted, and hopefully I'll have some partners in crime to help me out with that. So, yeah, there we go. I like to see that. It'd be cool to have both of you guys help out with that. That'd be a lot of fun because it's going to be pretty cool, and it's going to be all day, so you don't have to be there all day, but I do, and it'd be fun to have like
a relief caster.
Yeah. And also, speaking of DreamHack, I will be there. So anybody who's at DreamHack, make sure you tweet at me and let me know that you're there so we can meet up.
Fantastic.
That's in 2 weekends, I believe. So,
Jocelyn, how about yourself?
You can find me on Twitter and Twitch. I'm at Joss Plays. That's JOCE Plays. And you can find me right here on twitch.tv/AMoveTV every Wednesday night for my general gaming podcast called The Gamers In. You can also check out my self-help podcast on Tuesday nights at 9 p.m. Eastern over on twitch.tv/Joss Plays called Slaying Demons.
Check it out, folks.
I never talk about it, so I figure I should probably mention it.
You can find me on Twitter at Garrett Art. You can find all of the podcasts I do at amove.tv. Check out Into the Nexus for Heroes of the Storm because Genji and Hanamura just got announced, and I got to actually play both of them over 3 weeks ago now, and I've just been lying to everyone saying that we've already talked about everything that we saw at the summit. And also, already mentioned it, for Azeroth with Joss and I, World of Warcraft show. Go listen to that. That's going to do it for this week. Thanks again to Uniregistry for sponsoring. Go get your next domain name and all of your domain names at uniregistry.com. Until next time, job's done.
Job's done.
Job's done.
Yes!